I have always considered myself a man of reason, rooted firmly in the principles of evidence and cold logic. My profession demands it, for I serve as an investigator of crime, tasked with making sense of the grotesque, the inexplicable, and the terrifying. But reason and logic, those brittle companions of modernity, shattered one fateful night, leaving me a prisoner to horrors beyond the veil of human comprehension. I must begin with a warning. What I now recount is no mere product of feverish delirium, nor the invention of an overwrought mind. This tale, dreadful as it is true in every sense, though I wish more than anything that it were not. It began, as most horrors do, with something seemingly mundane. A phone call. "Reese," came the voice of my colleague Thomas Melton, strained and unnervingly taut. "I think you should come to this one. It's different." It was late, past the hour when the sane world slumbers and the unseen crawls from its forgotten places. I cursed him under my breath, irritated by the intrusion, but Thomas was not a man prone to exaggeration, and his tone, uncharacteristically hushed, awoke a strange unease in me. I arrived at the house within the hour, an ancient relic of decaying wood and shattered glass, looming at the far edge of town, where the trees seemed to conspire against the heavens, their gnarled branches curling inward like grasping fingers. The house, Victorian, if I had to guess, but ravaged by time, stood like a monument to forgotten decay, its ivy-draped facade resembling the gravestones of older, darker worlds. The police were already there, of course, milling about with the jittery nervousness I have come to recognize in those unprepared for the otherworldly. They avoided looking at the house for too long, as if afraid that acknowledging its presence too clearly would grant it dominion over their fragile minds. Thomas met me at the door. His face was pale, his eyes hollowed out by an unspoken terror. "Reese," he murmured, glancing around as if fearing someone or something might overhear us. "The victim. You need to see for yourself." With reluctance, I followed him inside. The house's interior was as decrepit as the exterior, its corridors shrouded in shadows that clung too tightly to the walls, as if the darkness possessed a sentience of its own. The air was stagnant, laced with a dampness that seemed far too ancient for a house of mere brick and mortar. He led me down a narrow hallway toward a door that seemed older than the house itself, an odd, almost primal construction of rough-hewn wood. Thomas hesitated before opening it, and in his pause I detected a palpable sense of dread. "She was found down here," he whispered, as if daring not to speak louder in that place. The door creaked open to reveal a narrow staircase descending into an abyss of blackness. A rancid odor, thick with damp decay, rose from below like the breath of some unseen beast, ancient and patient. I took a deep breath and descended, the rickety steps groaning underfoot as if the house itself disapproved of my intrusion. The cellar, when I reached its depths, was a cramped and claustrophobic chamber of stone, slick with moisture that gleamed like sweat on the walls. And there in the center of that foul pit lay the body of Anna Vickers. Her form was twisted, nay contorted, in a manner that defied any natural cause. Her limbs were bent at such impossible angles that my mind recoiled, and yet it was not the gruesome state of her body that disturbed me. It was her face, her wide, staring eyes and mouth frozen in a scream that seemed to echo through the very stones of that place. She had not died by any hand of flesh and blood. No, her expression bespoke a terror far deeper, far more ancient than any earthly fear. How did she die, I asked, though my voice trembled despite my efforts to maintain composure. "No signs of struggle, no wounds, no blood," Thomas muttered, his gaze fixed on something in the far corner of the cellar. "It's as if something took her from within." I followed his gaze, and my breath caught in my throat. Upon the cold, slick stone of the cellar wall, faint words had been etched, no, scratched, into the surface. They were worn with age and yet disturbingly fresh. as though the stone itself had remembered and reawakened the message. Do not listen to the whispers. The very sight of the inscription chilled me to my core. Whispers? What whispers? Thomas must have sensed my growing dread, for he gestured nervously toward the walls. The neighbor mentioned hearing something. Strange, the night she died. Said it sounded like voices, like many voices, but there was no one else here. She was alone. I felt a chill crawl up my spine, settling heavily at the base of my skull. Alone, yet not alone. The very air in that cellar seemed to press against me, thick with an unseen malevolence, as though something ancient and vile had lain dormant there for centuries, waiting for unsuspecting souls to awaken it. "We should leave," I muttered, my voice barely audible over the oppressive weight of the silence that surrounded us. Thomas nodded, and we made for the stairs. But as we turned, something stirred in the stagnant air around us. It was faint, almost imperceptible at first, but unmistakable. A whisper. It drifted through the cellar, a soft susurrus that seemed to come from the very stones themselves. The language was foreign, an alien cadence that defied the structures of human speech, yet it filled me with an overwhelming sense of dread. It was not merely sound, it was intent, a cold, calculating malice born of some intelligence far older than mankind. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my mouth dry as my heart hammered in my chest. Thomas's face had gone ashen. "Yes," he whispered, his eyes wide with terror. "I hear it." The whispers grew louder, though still too low to discern individual words. They coiled through the air like tendrils of smoke, wrapping around us, filling the very spaces between our thoughts. They were alive, I realized, living, breathing entities that dwelled in the darkness, and we had trespassed into their domain. "Go!" Thomas gasped, and we fled up the stairs, slamming the door behind us. Back in the upper rooms of the house, the air felt lighter, though the dread clung to me like a second skin. My mind raced, but no rational explanation could account for what we had experienced in that infernal cellar. There was a presence there, an intelligence that defied all reason, an entity whose existence gnawed at the fragile fabric of my understanding. I returned home, but peace eluded me. That night, the whispers followed me. Even in the supposed safety of my own bed, I could hear them. Soft, insidious, burrowing into my mind like worms. They grew louder as the hours passed, until they became an endless chorus of malevolent voices urging me, beckoning me to return to that cellar, to listen. For days I resisted, but the whispers did not abate. They became my constant companions, invading my thoughts, warping my dreams. I became consumed by a madness I could not escape, and finally I yielded to their call. It was late when I returned to the house, my hands trembling as I fumbled with the door. The night was eerily still, the world outside silent as if in anticipation of my descent. I moved through the house in a trance, each step heavier than the last, until I stood once more before that ancient cursed door. The cellar awaited me, its air thick with the foul stench of rot, and the whispers. They were deafening now, a cacophony of voices rising from the depths of the stones, each more urgent than the last. They spoke not in words, but in meaning, their intent twisting in my mind like a serpent. And then I saw it. In the far corner of the cellar where the inscription had been, the wall seemed to pulse, to writhe as though it were not stone at all, but flesh. Something alive shifted beneath the surface, struggling to break free. The whispers intensified, their meaning clear at last. "Come closer, listen." I obeyed, for I was no longer myself. The rational man who had once stood firm in the face of the unknown was gone, devoured by the madness that dwelled in that place. I approached the wall, my hand trembling as I reached out to touch its slick, undulating surface, and then the wall. opened. From the darkness beyond, a voice, no, the voice spoke. "You should not have returned." In that instant, something reached out from the abyss. Cold, monstrous and alien, it wrapped around my legs, dragging me towards the gaping maw of darkness. I struggled, but the force was beyond human strength. The void was endless, eternal. And as I was pulled into its depths, the last of the whispers spoke. "Now you will listen forever." I fell into the blackness, and the world was no more. I know not how long I have lingered in this place, for time is a construct that does not exist here. The void stretches endlessly in all directions, and the whispers are my only company, forever urging, forever whispering their truths. I have learned many things in the abyss, more than any mortal should know, but the price of knowledge is steep, and I have paid it with my sanity, my soul. The whispers tell me of things, terrible things that lie beneath the earth, waiting for the right moment to rise again. They tell me that I was not the first, nor will I be the last, and still I listen.